go ahead and bring up the slides if you want to get started.
Okay. Unfortunately, Greg's on YouTube. We don't have him, but I would love that. So welcome, everybody. I'm really thrilled to have so many people here joining us this afternoon, and we appreciate your time. And I appreciate, especially appreciate the kind of efforts that we've all made for this whole year, where we had to instantly close down. And as we'll talk about later, had to do a very quick turnaround as we've joyously moved to the red with fewer deaths and hospitalizations and other kinds of ways in which we think that we can look to a brighter future. So I'm excited about today. I'm excited to share everything I can with you. We'll try to answer as many questions in the chat as possible, talk a little bit about the surveys. And we've got a terrific panel today. We've got our associate superintendents, our Deputy Superintendent Graham Clark, Rachel Zlotsever, our communications coordinator, and Danae Nuremberg, who's working with our testing. Lots of people with lots of information. Christine Mallory's here, our CBO, to talk about money and PPE and so forth. So let's start the presentation and then get to your questions. No, we can't see the presentation, Graham. I don't know who's doing that one. While we're waiting for the presentation to come up, I think I want to be sure that I say that one of the things we're seeing so far in our survey is a pretty even split between people who want to come back to school and people who do not. And our goal is to be serving both groups of individuals. And there are good reasons for people to be making these choices. We know that, we respect that, and we want to honor as much as we can the needs that all our community has. So we're going to be talking about that today. We do not have all the details worked out yet, so I don't want to leave you hanging with suspense thinking we're going to be able to give that, but we're going to talk in broad ways that I think might be helpful to you. So thanks, Graham, for bringing that up. Let's go to the first slide. While you're getting that next slide up, I want to talk a little bit about the survey that you received. We have received some questions. This was a very broad survey without some of the specifics that I know you're craving. And we hope that you will just think of it as answering, would I come back in person? Would I not? We needed some broad information about the numbers of people that would be coming back, given some of the restrictions that remain. And we don't have the details. Some questions have been, would there be a teacher in the classroom? Of course there would be. Would it be my teacher? Most likely. I mean, but always we have teachers in classrooms that cannot be at school for a variety of very legitimate medical and other reasons, and we have substitutes. So in general, we would expect to see your teachers in your classrooms. So in February, we learned that distance learning would continue. We said distance learning would continue through April 9th. We've been bringing back small groups of students to campus for academic support, and you'll hear more about those numbers, but that number has been increasing, and we're really, really pleased with the results of that. We're seeing students get back on track, and it's working very well. We also know on March 3rd that Santa Clara moved to the red tier, which meant that we were largely getting some more ability to do things that we weren't able to do in the purple tier. And what also it meant within a few days of getting to the red tier is that now the rules in Santa Clara and the rules in the state of California are likely the same, very similar in any case. So we're seeing a lot more flexibility, but we are still required to keep the 6 foot of distancing. And at that time, stable cohorts were recommended, but not required. We're seeing loosening around those stable cohorts. When we were stuck with 2 cohorts, it was very challenging to think about how we were going to do in-person school. There is a little flexibility in some of the language around the 6 foot of distancing, saying 4 if we can show a good faith effort to make it 6, but we are aiming at 6 and thinks that largely creates about a half capacity in all our classrooms. The governor, as you know, had just last week with the legislators released a reopening plan, and it has funding embedded in the model to help us get back to school, and we're grateful for that. But it really goes beyond that, and it talks not only about returning to school, but how we're going to make sure that our students get back to school with success. In other words, make up for some lost time, look at the learning loss that we've talked about in the past, take a look at the social emotional needs. And we're very grateful the fact that the legislature and the governor have given us some funding to make that possible on a greater scale than we do normally every day. Go ahead, Graham. Thank you. Um, so I just want to kind of talk a little bit about how we got here today, and go through the year that we've been through. We started in March of 2020, yes, almost a year ago, with emergency learning. And we moved to the purple tier in November 17th of 2020. We did start some purple tier sports in February of 2021. We're allowed to do some outdoor practices for track and field, and also for our golf groups and our tennis groups, but largely sports we're still doing conditioning. The big thing that happened in February, only a little while ago, the end of February, was the vaccination becoming available to educators, and that was part of the governor's plan. And putting us at the front of the line was huge. It really meant that educators could feel that they were protected when they come back to the classroom, and protecting their students as well as each other. So we're very excited and very thankful for that. I think some of you know that on March 1st, season 2 practice began, and that included some efforts to include football and some of our other sports. And we have finally moved into the red tier on March 3rd, as I mentioned earlier. The limitation on 2 cohorts has changed from required to recommended. And that's big, because that means we could have kids back and have them go to multiple classes and do their after school activities. So we are also surprised that last week we heard that indoor sports are going to be approved. So this has really been moving very fast from the February 28th or February 1st on down. I think many of us were not sure it would be this rapid, but grateful that it is, and very excited that we're going to be able to offer opportunities to students on campus. We actually are serving a great many students on campus already, but we're going to hear from our principals about that soon. Okay, next. So again, this is where we are. We have a survey that we've just given a second time on vaccinations for staff. It's pretty exciting. About 50% of our staff have responded, and of those 50%, 82% have already had 1 dose of vaccine, 4% have had both, 9% have a first dose appointment scheduled. So that's a huge number of our employees. And of the ones that haven't responded, we're working to try to find out whether they're having any challenges getting vaccinated. And we want to be sure that we find the availability that they need. We were really struggling for a while with teachers who lived out of county, which is pretty common because they can't afford to live in this county, or other staff living out of county and not being able to get vaccinated in Santa Clara. But eventually the counties made peace with that. And so now Santa Clara County folks can indeed, that work here can indeed be vaccinated here. And the Santa Clara County Office of Education and the Public Health Department have been very, very helpful in providing direct assistance to our staff about getting vaccinated. And we thank Rachel for communicating over and over again where those vaccines have been made available to us. And so we look forward to having as many of our employees vaccinated as possible. There are some that may have medical challenges around the vaccine, but we know that will go a long way to making everyone safe upon our return. I think we're now going to hear from a number of the other staff that are going to tell you what we've been doing while we've been waiting for this moment when it's looks like it's really possible for us to structure a plan to come back. We really have been focused on a great many activities and a great deal of planning. We'll talk to you about what's already on our website, but we want to talk to you about what you can expect for staff and students as we see a return, and I'm going to ask Trudy to start.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I do want to acknowledge that we have a large number of people on YouTube, and we're very happy to have you there. I do recognize that the questions and answers are being conducted from this format. So following the presentation today, if you have a question that did not get answered, please feel free to follow up with one of us cabinet members or with your school site. Thank you. So the first thing I want to share with you is we did launch with our staff a health screening tool that's from a company called Qualtrics. And what occurs every day is that staff, whether they are coming to work on campus or not, is required to fill this out. It is a screening. Many of you have probably seen the questions in terms of COVID symptoms. So they fill it out saying whether or not they're going to be on campus that day. If they're going to be on campus, then they have to answer whether or not they're having any symptoms, whether they have been asked to quarantine or been around someone who's had COVID. So we go through that screen, and then at the end, if they are certified, they receive a green check. We are in the process of coordinating such a process in light of students returning to campus, and we will be providing more information about that. We meet again with the company later this week to work out many of the parameters around that. Some of you have attended our webinars in the past where we have talked about our safety protocols, and you have seen, received those in email, and later we'll be reminding you where those are located. But one of the things that we have kept in place, in addition to doing the screening, is we do our contact tracing human to human. What that means is that when we have someone who has said that they have been exposed to COVID, either as a close contact or they themselves are a positive case, they report that to a COVID designee. We have one at every campus. I am the one here at the district office, and I also coordinate for the district. So I attend regular meetings with the county, which includes County Office of Education and County Public Health, to ensure that the protocols that we have in place are those that follow county and state directives. So when someone reports either symptoms or close contact or positive case, then our site designees actually work through the timeline. They ensure that the individual has received the isolation and quarantine guidelines, and they confirm the date by which the person, whether it's a student or staff, would return to work or play or school. And so we feel that continuing to utilize staff members to ask the questions, make sure we're covering all our bases with close contacts and exposure, really ensures that we have those protocols safely at hand. And now Christine's going to talk about personal protective equipment.
Well, this is something that has evolved since the beginning of this pandemic. In the beginning of this pandemic, we were having a hard time procuring things. We couldn't find hand sanitizer. We couldn't find wipes. Through some of the generous donations of our community, we were able to get disposable masks. The governor sent us a lot of PPE, and our facilities director, Eric Wolkevich, worked very hard with Ruth Sandoval, our purchasing agent, to procure all of the personal protective equipment that we need. They've come up with a system where these things are stored in our warehouse. They're working with the facilities managers to make sure that these items get out to the sites so that they're there in the classrooms. So we will have all of the personal protective equipment we need once we resume school. Regarding cleaning versus sanitation, our custodial standards have been updated to include all of the new guidance regarding cleaning and sanitation. We are sanitizing all of the spaces, And we have been spending some time, our facilities department, Eric and Tara, training all of the custodians and the facilities managers on how to properly sanitize and clean and sanitize all of the classrooms and all of the common areas.
Thank you very much, Christine. I'm going to try to tackle the other things. So I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is, what do we still have to do? Lots of things have been relaxed. We have more freedom than we've had before. Certainly getting vaccinated gives us a sense of relief and real protection. But the things that still need to be done are that we must wear masks. We need to keep the distance. And we also need to be mindful of the airflow in our classrooms. So we have been working for over a year, actually, not only through our modernization process, but in other ways to ensure that we have quality ventilation systems that process the air thoroughly. So there's enough circulation of oxygen and outside air in the classrooms to feel that we can safely have students indoors. In addition to that, the facilities department that Christine talked about have worked diligently to be sure we have MERV 13 filters in all our systems. Now, this is a list. We have someone going room to room to analyze every single classroom in the district and every space in the district. And the green means that it's capable of holding a classroom of students. You'll see the MERV 13 filters on the right-hand side, but it's in great detail. What does blue mean? Blue means it's a space. In this case, this is an MDF room, which we don't use for people on a regular basis. And then the yellow one is an example of a room that still needs some small, modest changes made to the HVAC system to ensure that it's completely capable of managing a classroom of students. Now, we're using a standard classroom size for this analysis, but we really know that when we come back, because of that 6-foot distancing, we're not going to have a standard size classroom. We're going to be having roughly 50% of the students in the room at this time until that particular requirement is relaxed. So I want you to know that every space in the district is being analyzed in this way. And we're really excited that most of that work has been done and most of these updates have been made. So all our classrooms will be ready very, very soon. I'm sorry we're having, this is a little slow. It's our first attempt at doing a YouTube at the same time. And we have had some problems with our server today. So I think that's impacting us a bit. All right. So I want you to know, we've had several people say things like, well, where's your opening plan? What have you been doing? Have you had an opening plan? These safety protocols and these resources have been up on our website for many, many months, and we encourage you to look at them. They talk about the opening plan, the learning guides, bringing back to school safety protocols. All of that is on our website, and it is getting updated as we get more and more information. So it's really important to know that that's there, that will continue to be updated, and we will continue to add to it as these changes occur and we get our plans in place. So basically, I want you to really hear, we have spent this time not only our teachers doing incredibly hard work and yeoman's work at making sure that our students do the best possible learning they can at home. And they moved from this emergency learning model to learning how to be very effective on Zoom and doing the kinds of distance learning that they have done. We're very pleased about that. And then while they were doing that, there's a whole cadre of people that have worked behind the scenes to get prepared for coming back to school, to do the safety protocols, to get things in place. So I just wanted you to be aware of this. We have talked about this in some other cases, but I want to be sure you saw this tonight. So if we could go to the next slide, Graham. So I just wanted you to be aware of this. I've talked about this in some other cases, but Okay, we're going to ask Danae to give us testing updates. There have been some changes to the state testing and some of the other tests that we're offering. So thank you, Danae, for joining us today.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Polly. So many of you know that we have state testing requirements to fulfill annually, and they're typically at the 11th grade level, and then also for English language arts and math, and then also a science test by the end of the 12th grade. There's been some recent changes at the federal level with the switchover of federal administration. So the Biden administration has recently given schools the option to have some flexibility, or states some flexibility in their testing requirements. And we are now kind of in a holding pattern with the state of California as they continue to move through and navigate some of this with the federal government. So we're waiting to find out what exactly our testing requirements will be. Previously, we had testing scheduled for the week of April 5th and through the 9th. And so we are no longer going to be testing during that week. And we'll keep families updated once we learn more on this topic. But for now, our state standardized testing is postponed. For AP testing, this testing schedule has been released. And for those of you on the call who have students in an AP class, you know that College Board put out a fairly restrictive calendar of testing options. So we have a combination of in-person exams and digital exams. The in-person exams are mandated by College Board, and there are language and music theory tests. And the rest of the exams will be in a digital format. College Board recently published their technical requirements, and there's the secure browser that will be required for the testing, and it'll become available on April 8th. We're working on plans for students to be able to download and practice that secure browser to make sure that they have access to the exams at home. And for those who have any sort of internet instability or the secure browser isn't working on their home device, we are making plans for them to be able to test digitally on our campus. At this point, there have been a few questions around what families need to do in order to sign up for the appropriate exam for AP testing, and you don't need to do anything. Our schools will go into your students' College Board account and they'll correct the dates probably by the end of the month. So that looks a little bit different now in the College Board accounts, but we're working on getting that switched over to the Fremont Union High School District test offering dates. And then lastly, we have 2 remaining tests, college admissions tests that we are running on our sites. So we still have the ACT that we are administering at Monte Vista High School on April 17th. And then we also have the SAT at Monte Vista on May 8th. For those folks who have not yet been able to take advantage of one of our many test offerings this year, know that we will bring back the weekend national administrations. Likely we'll go pretty heavy in the fall to make sure we can capture any students who either needed to retake an exam or who weren't able to take an exam with us this school year. And then just a final note that College Board has eliminated the essay portion of the SAT after the June administration, and they have, effective immediately about a couple of months ago, they eliminated the subject tests. So those are no longer an option through our test offerings based off of College Board's changes. And now
I just emphasize something, Danae? We have so many people that were kind of frustrated about the dates that were given for the AP tests, some in June and so forth. I just want to reiterate, this wasn't like Danae's favorite date for that test, right?
correct.
It was the College Board that gave us those options. We did not have any control over those dates. So I apologize, those of you that are taking AP Calculus and AP Physics on the same day. I know that's going to be a tough day. I'm glad they're somewhat related in terms of the kind of content, but I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that, Polly. And we're working on plans for those students who might have test conflicts. We're also working on getting that information out to students and making accommodations for those students as well. So that'll come in due time as we work through all of the testing season.
That's great. Go ahead.
And then now I believe Trudy Gross is taking things back over with mental health supports.
Thank you. So we continue to have our wellness check-in process available through our website, and Polly had just displayed where those items can be found. And the wellness piece is on that same web page. So we really encourage parents on behalf of students or students to complete that. Our staff are ready and have been addressing those needs. They also are addressing the needs that come up, either students contacting them through email or teachers or other staff following up. So we have a good process in place of addressing concerns as they arise and also trying to be proactive in that way. We continue to have our partnership that's in place for this year through Care Solace, and we have seen over 500 people searching on the site. We also have had over 50 warm handoffs or new cases that have come up and have been working through a care concierge. So we're very glad to have that in place and glad that people are availing themselves. Again, that link is available on our COVID-19 resources page. And it can be done either by contacting Jasmine Kroner, our School Link Services, who will do a warm handoff to a care concierge, or you can search on the website yourself and talk to a care concierge 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Also across this year, we've had a number of advisory lessons that have touched on stress and the challenges of distance learning. So our guidance counselors put together a advisory on happiness and how to find and support yourself in different forms of happiness. We also have had 2 mental health advisories that have focused on strategies for support and how to deal with ups and downs as they come. And so we're happy to continue to build on those types of things. And I will give one more plug. We have done 2 parent webinars with El Camino Health. The second of them is this evening. So last month we did one on suicide prevention education, and this month we are doing a webinar regarding validating language and how to support your teens and help them work towards kind of mutual goals and help them see their goals if you're feeling, that you're at odds in terms of next steps. So that is this evening from 6 to 7:30, and we hope to have more people join us.
So we're going to hear a little bit after the next slide from some of our parents, some of our principals, sorry. We're going to talk about another kind of mental health support, which is really getting our kids back to seeing each other and being connected to the school. And we're excited, obviously, to have the athletics we spoke about, but we're going to talk about more things that are available at our schools every day. So Trudy, do you want to talk a little bit about graduation and senior activities? I think there's seniors out there that want to know.
Absolutely. So we have been planning, actually, we've been discussing graduation since December actively, and it's something we've really talked about all year. And we are happy that as the tiers have moved, so has widened the number of people that can be together in a group. I am working closely with the County Office of Education and County Public Health in terms of confirming the size of those groups. There's anywhere right now reported between 200 and 400, but our goal is to have safe in-person graduation ceremonies. And so we continue to work on what those details look like. We are, hoping that the directives and our tiers continue to move in a positive direction that allows those groups to only get larger, because the number is what I call an all-in number, meaning that we would have to think about how many students, family members, and staff could be part of ceremonies. So we're working with our sites to determine how to put those ceremonies together in order to have them be safely spaced and together. So we meet again this week, and we will continue to coordinate with the state and county in terms of directives. But please know that it is our goal to have safe in-person graduation ceremonies. And I think Tom is going to talk about athletics.
Yes. Athletics, as Polly referenced, is very important part of many of our students, both physical and mental health. And for a long time, we were concerned that we weren't going to be able to have an athletics season. But fortunately, the conditions started to change, and the Santa Clara Valley Athletic League, that is the league that we are a part of, made a decision to adopt a 3-season model. And some of you may not know that the league decisions, there's 14 schools in that league, and we are 5 of those schools. And so we abide by their decisions. And they went with a 3-season model that maximizes the opportunities for kids to play and compete. And so a little over a month ago, the season 1 began, and that was cross country, girls golf, girls tennis, and swimming. And just last week, season 2 began with field hockey, football, gymnastics, boys and girls soccer, badminton, and girls volleyball. And season 3 is scheduled to start on April 5th, which will involve track, boys tennis, boys golf, baseball, softball, boys volleyball, boys and girls water polo. And with recent ruling, it looks like some indoor sports will be allowed pending certain health rules like boys and girls basketball and possibly wrestling. So this is good news for our student athletes. And also I'd like to remind folks that physical education PE credit will still be offered in the same way it was pre-COVID for those students who successfully complete an entire season. And that is limited to the sophomores through seniors. And I'd also like to really thank the coaches and athletic directors and other staff who have made this possible. Many of them contributed many hours when, while competition wasn't allowed, we were allowed to do some training, some conditioning. And without the dedication of our coaches, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So we're excited to be able to bring back sports in a safe, reasonable manner and look forward to the seasons progressing as planned.
So I'm just checking, Graham. I don't know if you're able to brief the construction on our classrooms, or you'd like me to go ahead. I'm going to assume that means go ahead, Polly. So I think you are
Yeah, I
aware
got
that,
inline mute, but it's on.
can you do it, Graham? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead. So I think you may be aware that all 5 of our schools have been under construction, renovation, and really working diligently to use this time when students were away to accelerate our bond projects. That's been important for several reasons. Probably the most important reason is that it will reduce the disruption to schools when kids do come back, because construction is a disruption. But it also has saved us money. We've been able to work more quickly and not have as much escalation in the costs. We do have adequate classrooms for students when we come back. We've had some questions about would teachers have to share rooms, and there would be some sharing. We would do our best to minimize that. And we would also look to that cleaning that we talked about to ensure that we keep everything safe. We're very pleased with the construction that's taken place, and I think you'll be excited to come back and take a look and see that. I mentioned the parent survey earlier, and I just want to say again, we understand that it was vague and you would have liked more information. The things I've heard that were confusing, I mentioned some of those before. Will there be a teacher in the classroom? Yes. Will it be your teacher? Most likely. Then we've heard things about, well, we don't know enough detail to really make that decision. And we understand that. Once we get this full plan developed, and we hope that will be very soon, we want to put out a second survey that's more like a parent commitment to saying, yes, I'm ready with that model to say I'm going to come to school, or no, I think I want to continue to have my son or daughter work from home. And we understand that both options are possible. I saw a couple of comments in the chat about, I'm worried if my kid's at home and there are kids in school, my kid at home won't get as much attention. Or I'm worried if my kid I'm worried as a teacher, how am I possibly going to give equal attention to kids that are right in front of me and kids that are on Zoom? And the answer needs to be very clear. We're going to make the content the same, but we cannot promise that there's going to be the same kind of concentrated effort that there's been on Zoom, and our teachers have done, as I said, yeoman's work to make that happen. There's going to be a balance, but that's because we are bringing kids back. And I think we all know that in that process, one of the things that we're doing is what schools are great for doing, which is creating connections between students, connections between teachers and students. And we talk about the fact that Fremont Union High School District has comprehensive high schools. Well, that means that it goes beyond the pure academics, and it includes those relationships. And let me tell you why that's important. We heard Linda Darling-Hammond speak on Saturday for the whole county. And as she said so well, relationships make learning better for students. Those connections make learning better. So although there have been tremendous efforts made to make these connections between teachers and students and between staff and students, and I know our assistant principals and principals have become superstars on YouTube to make those connections continue. Our ASBs across the district have tried. That in-person part makes a difference. And so when possible, we're going to have that happen again because we know that increases learning. And we're going to do our best to balance the demands of teachers trying to do something that's very challenging, which is deal with the students in front of them and the students who are at home. So again, the survey I know was a little bit frustrating. Please try to let us broadly know if you're willing to send your child back to school or if you feel most comfortable having them at home. That'll help us with our counts and our thinking and our logistics and help us come back to you with a more accurate plan. And then we will come back with a second, we're going to call it a commitment survey that'll be clearer. We are going to have more and more activities returning to in-person school. You heard about athletics and the 3 seasons. That's definitely happening. You heard about the planning for graduation, so that will include some activities as well. But we're going to try to hear from our principals now who are going to talk to you about some things that are changing as we speak, as we get ready for more of the things that kids love about high school coming back. So I will say before we get to them, we will be forming, I hope by the end of this week, we'll have some invitations out. We'll look to our COVID-19 committee from last year and do a return to school committee, because we don't just have to talk about return to school in whatever format we're able to do this year, but we're really all hoping with the potential for students and parents to be vaccinated by next fall, that we can look at a much more normal return to school in August. And so we really want that committee to help us look at the details and the complexities and try to make some, help us make some decisions. So if we have a principal that we can bring in at this point, or who would be willing to speak about some of the thinking and the plans you have about activities that will return our students to school, and maybe tell us a little bit about who's already back, because that's also exciting.
Sure, I can jump in there. This is Greg Giglio, principal over at Homestead. So we were sort of counting up the numbers, and I think we have between about 400 and 500 students that have returned in some form to campus and after school activities. So we have both seasons 1 and seasons 2 starting to go for athletics. We have some academic support pods that different teachers or administrators have started running. We have nearly 100 kids in there. We also have some activities like band, cheer, flags, that kind of thing that are starting to go. And we're also getting more requests from others to start to open up some club activities, maybe some club meetings, in-person club meetings. We're also looking at some of the regulations that just came through in regards to singing and music being able to be performed outside. So we're looking for ways to safely do that as well too.
Thanks, Greg. Someone else?
I'll piggyback on that. So we're doing a lot of the same things with athletics. We have a handful of cohorts that started. We started with a few back in early January, and we've sort of had them increase since then. As Polly mentioned, the getting the vaccine has definitely helped people feel more comfortable to come back on. So we've had a few other groups that have come on in the past couple of weeks, and a couple more that are in line to be coming in pretty soon. I know, for example, our band director he's been anxiously chomping at the bit for several weeks, waiting for them to be able to play. And so now he's ready to start rolling that out this week. And then we just sent out today, our Dean of Students who works with Link Crew sent out a survey to all of our Link Crew leaders to see about comfort level for students to come back to help do some orientation with ninth graders. So we're not sure what that's going to look like just yet, but starting to see if we can get some students in place, because we need the man, woman, person power to be able to do some of those orientation activities. So that just got started today.
And that's really talking about our current ninth graders. We are doing other work for the future ninth graders, but we're excited to bring you current ninth graders back in some ways in person. So that was Brian Emmerich from Fremont High School. Thank you, Brian. Anyone else?
Sure, Polly, I'll jump in. Ben Klausnitzer from Monte Vista, very similar to both Homestead and Fremont, where we've got some academic small pods on campus, as well as athletic cohorts and activities cohorts. It sounds pretty similar to what Greg had mentioned. I believe we're over 400 students, and maybe once some of our kind of to be determined cohorts that have been identified, I would imagine we're going to be pushing 500. So, we're talking 20 to 25% of our students being already on campus in some manner. And then we're looking to expand, especially in that world of activities, in the world of clubs coming here on campus, hopefully in the next few weeks. And similar to what Brian mentioned, I think, yes, the thought process of orientation for ninth graders, but also maybe reorientation for something like our 10th graders, as they were on campus really for a short amount of time during their ninth grade year before we shut down in March 13th of last year. So that's something else that we're pondering and thinking about doing here at Monte Vista.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Hi, I'm Maria Jackson. I'm the principal at Lynbrook. It's really nice to be here. We are, as principals, I know I can speak for all of us when we say we're so excited about the prospect of having our students on campus with us. We really miss them. So I just want to make sure that's clear for all of us. And I just wanted to echo some of the things that the other principals said. Yes, we already have athletics on campus going on. That's, hundreds of students over the course of a week that are on our campus. We have a small cohort of students that are meeting. Those were students that were identified that wanted some extra support. They were really struggling with distance learning. So those students have been with us since February. And we have another cohort of special education students that have been with us since early February. And we also have a teacher who's identified some of her own students that she wants to work with. And she's also been here. We have things going on with drama, things happening in front of green screens as they're putting together their virtual summer musical. So there really are more and more things happening, and we get so excited when we see our kids on campus. We have done a freshman orientation already at the beginning of the year. Our Link Crew did all that virtually. And we're in the process of reaching back out to our Link Crew leaders and the teachers who oversee that to see what we can do to kind of reorient our freshmen to get them back on campus, at least have them walk around and see where their classes are. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about doing at Lynbrook, and some of the things that we're already doing.
Yeah. Do we have Melina here from Cupertino, who's Cammie's involved in a WASP process, I know.
Yes. So my name's Melina Nafrata. I'm assistant principal, but I did log in with Cammie's link, so that's why it has her name on my screen. But very similar to all the other schools, hundreds of athletes. We have, as of today, about 12 academic and social emotional support pods with about 40 students in, and we have more students that we're adding each day. And similar to what the other schools said about looking at an orientation, we did, as well as like Lynbrook, a virtual orientation in the fall, in August. But so now we're kind of reaching back out to those students, and our program is called C-Link, to see how comfortable they would be and how willing they would be to help, because we definitely need help, and the students are our great ambassadors. But one of the things that we want to make sure that we'll be focusing on is helping that orientation serve as a way to not only help the students get to know how to walk around the campus, but also what are the safety protocols going to be, and how are they going to be able to understand that, and so that they don't end up in a situation where they feel uncomfortable, where the staff feels uncomfortable, but to help them as part of that process.
Thank each one of you. I happen to know that Allison Coy may be on the call, but I know there's some talk about middle college and how that's going to be, we're going to have some more opportunities for in-person things there. So I just want to be clear. We just heard less than a week ago that we could play music outdoors. We heard just less than a few weeks ago that we were actually first in line to get our vaccines. We just went into red tier last week, and all the time we were really poised to do these kinds of things as we prepared to do the shift for academics. And the shift for academics is not small. It is a very big shift, and one that our teachers are committed to and excited about. And the logistics are challenging. And I appreciate what Melina said at the end. We all are going to have to learn the details and the logistics of having kids on campus. Even if we only have a fourth of our kids on campus, how do we handle passing periods? How do we handle lunch? How do we handle brunch? And when people have been away from each other for a long time, but you are both hesitant when you see a lot of people, I know I am, and you're also excited. And it's going to be really hard for us to maintain that distancing. I feel very confident that our students understand and really are committed to wearing masks. We've seen that already with the students that are coming on campus. We're going to have some already at the ready in case they don't remember theirs. But our whole goal here is to make this safe and to commit to as much of a comprehensive high school as we can for those kids that are ready to come back and participate in those things. And then to work with our staff to try to do something that sounds almost impossible, which is this combination of working with a few kids in their classroom and the kids at home and try to balance that. So I'm happy to answer any questions that we possibly can answer. And maybe you can help us manage the questions, Rachel.
Of course. We have over 100 still in the chat, so I know we won't get to everything, but I think we'll try to stay on a little longer than 4:30 since we had a lot to cover there. There's quite a few questions about the description that was sent out in the survey, and that it seems that maybe the educational experience isn't really going to be much different than what is being provided right now in distance learning. So what is the purpose of bringing students back?
Well, I think the experience is going to be different. I don't know if any of you have had the experience yet of feeling like you're away from everybody and then you suddenly get a chance to be with people. It's different. It just plain and simple is. And we know that those, as I said, those connections really make a difference when we're talking about the quality of learning. So I know that it's not like going to be Zoom in a room. It is going to be the teacher's real, the kids are real, the interactions are real. And we've seen that happen in the classrooms that have already been working in all our schools. I heard very clearly kids are starting to do interactions in these places where we're providing support classes. So it really will make a difference. And in some of the activity classes, like our music classes, obviously that's something that's far better to do in person than it is at home, but we'll try to manage both. Before we go any further, I want to say that at the end of this webinar that we have today, there are going to be a couple of survey questions that don't have to do with distance learning or coming back exactly, but we have something called the local control accountability plan that we have to manage. And we're going to be asking for some input from you as parents, since we have you on this call, and hope that you'll stay and give us a chance to take these 2-question surveys. It'll be very quick, but we look forward to your input. We're asking your input in a lot of ways right now, I know, and I truly appreciate it. So other questions?
When students make a decision, will they be able to switch back from if they decide to come in for in-person and then they're not comfortable, or vice versa? Would they be able to change?
Great question. This is all going to be a numbers game. So that 6 foot of distance I talked about really is the key here. We believe, depending on the size of the classroom, we can fit somewhere between 12 and 15 or 16 students in a room. So if we're at the max, then we need to think about that. But I don't think we should be so rigid that we can't be flexible when kids need to make a change. I think this is going to be new territory for all of us. So I think we're going to do our best to be flexible, and you need to be flexible with us, understanding that we're going to have that limitation on the size of the student body in a classroom.
For the fall, for next year, will we be able to commit to a full in-person option 5 days a week?
I think what you have to know is this is not about Polly's commitment or any of the principals' commitment on this call or our school board's commitment or just the Fremont Union High School District's commitment. We are going by public health rules, and we have been driven by those, absolutely those regulations from the time we shut down, and we continue to be driven by those regulations today. The main thing that they would have to ease up on for us to come back to school in more normal ways is this distancing requirement. And should that go away, I feel comfortable saying to you that we are far more likely to come back in normal ways in the fall. I still don't know if all our families will be ready for that, but in terms of our own ability to function normally, it really is that distancing requirement that's part of the key, since we believe we've solved the ventilation requirement and we believe everyone's going to wear a mask.
Are we able to share any initial information from the survey on the split between remote learning and in person?
Well, I think, Rachel, you can do that, but it's been hovering right at 50-50 all day long. Is it still doing that?
That's accurate. It's very close, and we've had about 2,500 responses, a little more than that.
So if you know someone that hasn't responded, have them do that, please. Because as I said, it's a numbers game for us, and we really need a broad picture of those numbers so we can start making plans more accurately. So then you can get that commitment survey I know you're eager to have.
There's several questions, of course, about when this hybrid model might be starting. I know we've talked a little bit about that, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it needs to be as soon as we reasonably can. The other survey that's huge to us is the number of teachers getting vaccinated. And while I know there are people on this call that will say, but vaccinations aren't required. And there are other people that say, yeah, but vaccinations really make us safer. I think the fact that they do make us safer is real. And so that is going to play a big part in it. But I appreciate how quickly the county and specifically our County Office of Education, Rachel and her work, our local health organizations have worked to get those vaccines out and prioritize educators, all of our educators. Because I think you have to remember, I think sometimes you think only of teachers in this key. They aren't the only ones. We have people that are doing cleaning and sanitizing, cleaning restrooms during the day, are going to be cleaning high touch surfaces during the day. Those people are really in direct contact more, in many ways, more with students than some of our other staff. So having all educators vaccinated is a big part of that. And it looks to us like we're really moving rapidly in that direction. And so it would be sooner rather than later. And I wish I could give you a date today, but I'm not able to, but I hope later this week to be much clearer about that.
Can we give any more detail on for the hybrid model, how many days a week it might be or how many hours a day?
So Tom, maybe you can help us with this. I think this, as I say, this is a numbers game. So let's assume it's 50% of our students that are coming back. And let's assume that we can only have somewhere between 10 and 15 kids in a classroom. Well, then we have to balance that. Do we have to split those groups in two? Even the half, the 50% in two, so we have 25%. Because you may recall, we do have classrooms with 38 kids in them. And so there's no way we can even fit 50% of them in a room given this distancing model. So it may be that we have to have about 25% of the kids on campus at any one time, which would mean we'd have to split the week between those two groups. But Tom, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, the one thing that I think parents might be wondering is whether they're at home or whether they'd go to school in person. Is the schedule going to change much? Our plan right now is no. There'll still be 90 minutes of instruction. It just will happen simultaneously for those at home and those who come to in person. And while we don't have a nailed down final plan yet, I am familiar with some of the other high schools and other areas that were able to be less restricted than our county. And they have moved to a plan where a quarter of the kids come on Monday, Tuesday, and then a quarter of the kids come on Thursday, Friday. And then of course, the half the kids have chosen to remain remotely the whole time. So that is one model that we're looking at.
What is the plan to address the learning loss that many students are experiencing right now?
I'm going to see if Tom wants to try that, and any of our principals are welcome to jump in too.
So we have a number of intervention programs that have been already in place. And by and large, our teachers are very adept at assessing students where they are with formative assessments and saying, hey, if we're not, let's say in a math class, they're not particularly meeting a particular standard, our teachers have always been recognizing that students are at different places, whether it's from a pandemic or from coming from different environments, different schools, different feeder schools, and we will adjust. Our teachers have been working for a year on figuring out what are the essential skills that all teachers, all students need to learn to be able to do. And that's the focus. And there's recognition that when students come back, it's not going to be flip the switch, oh, we're exactly going to be where we were in previous years. Adjustments have to be made. But I can commit to you that every student will have the opportunity to be successful and to learn the essential content skills. It won't be like a year of lost learning where kids will feel like they're behind for the rest of their career. That's not going to happen.
Can we speak to the special education population, which is one of the vulnerable groups of students prioritized by the state for in-person learning?
Trudy, do you want to tackle that? I don't know if Nancy's available, but Trudy, want to answer that, or I can try?
Yes, certainly. So we have, along with our discussion with all of our staff, been looking at the prioritization of those students. And so there are pods, cohorts, groups. I know we're using those terms kind of interchangeably that are occurring on our campuses. And as we create the rest of the in-person return to campus, those students will also be included. And I know there's been some questions about how are groups formed and how are students determined. And so as Rachel mentioned, we're still conducting the survey and we have kind of that 50-50 split. So we will ensure that students are incorporated into those groups, particularly our students who have special needs, our English language learners, our students who have other challenges or have experienced other challenges.
And Trudy, I know there have been discussions already and they're continuing about things like how are we going to manage special ed transportation and other kinds of pieces that go around that as well. So I just want people to know that these discussions are happening. We're trying to think them through.
I think it's important, yes, to emphasize that. And there's been a lot of questions in the chat of people looking for a specific date for the return to campus. And one of the important pieces of that is for us to be able to backwards plan by at least 2 weeks to get all the transportation in place. I'll also mention, because there was a question about students who take the public bus. And I believe, Polly, you had mentioned in a meeting earlier last week that there has been coordination with VTA, and our understanding is that there will be opportunities to use the public bus.
Yes, and I'm hoping to have a full-fledged conversation tomorrow morning about this. I did reach out to them last week and again today. And I don't know if most people on this call know, but for students that take the public bus, there's a significant number in this district who do. And the VTA often adds busing transportation when school's in session. And so they're going to have to ramp up themselves to bring more buses back, because we do not want too many kids on any one bus. But VTA is quite a plan around how to have people ride public transportation safely, and they will extend that to our students as well. And that's going to be part of our talk with them to be sure they're ready when we are.
How will teachers and staff help assist students as they kind of navigate this disruption? Some who might be fearful of another shift after finally feeling like they've found their groove in remote learning.
Boy, it isn't just kids, right? I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but change is hard. And we had to do extreme changes in last March, and we're being asked to do pretty extreme changes now. They may be more welcome. We may be excited to have them, but change is plain and simple hard. So I think it's going to be hard for staff. I think it's going to be hard for parents. I think it's going to be hard for students. As eager as everybody is for it, it's still going to be challenging, and we're going to have to find our way again. I'm convinced people can get back on the bike and ride, or the horse, but I think that we're all very sensitive to that idea. That's why I know our teachers are saying, but how are we going to navigate having kids at home and kids in school? Not just because of the learning issues, which are huge, but also because we want to be very attentive to these kinds of emotional needs that kids are going to have. So I think that's one of the reasons I think as quickly as possible doing these activities and getting kids back to school starts to help them feel comfortable on campus, connected again, find connections to the things they have loved, and then we can make it the transition back to the classroom much easier. But it's a problem.
We've had a couple questions about activities like labs or music, other things that when we bring students back or students that choose to come back, will they be able to do some of those things maybe in a modified way? And how will, if they're staying home, what will the difference be between those at home and those?
One of the principals want to tackle that? Have you seen it in action at all in some of the pods that have returned?
I think that, that's going to be one of the challenges, right? That if you're doing a lab, say in chemistry, being able to replicate that lab at home is a pretty difficult thing. But there are ways in which the teachers are trying to share those labs or do them virtually, or kind of change the lab write-ups. If you're talking about, you're the tuba player and the band is playing, on the quad and you're at home, that's not going to be the same kind of situation. So there's going to have to be some give and take, but again, I think there's going to be some places where it will be more seamless. But there are challenges for those more hands-on participatory types of classes, like a lab class or a music class, or say even an art class. Although in art class, you can still do some of the same work at home that they are doing in the classroom, much like an English class. But that's going to definitely be a challenge.
And I think some of those things, like our music classes, you talked about it, and I think several other people did too, are going to be happening outdoors. And so that really creates a bigger safe space for more students to participate in. And so that's going to be exciting when we have kids back for them to be able to do it. But we do have a lot of incredible software that's allowed our kids to sing together and play together. So I'm sure that's going to continue.
There's a question about whether the bell schedule is going to change when we move into this next phase, and some folks are more folks are on campus.
You want to try it, Tom?
Our expectation is to try and keep things as similar to the current schedule as possible. We recognize that change is difficult. There might be slight adjustments. For example, right now we don't have what's called brunch. We do have 15-minute passing periods, say between fourth and fifth period, but maybe we add 5 minutes there, and then lunch is an hour. Maybe we reduce it to 55 minutes. Might we have to move the office hours on Tuesday, Friday, perhaps? But by and large, the goal is to keep the, Mondays and Thursdays are periods 1, 2, 3, 7, and Tuesdays and Fridays are periods 4, 5, and 6. And we want to keep the same Wednesday schedule that people are used to.
There were some questions about tiered reopening. Are we going to do this by grade level or in any other way?
We haven't talked about doing it that way. We don't have very many weeks left in school. I think that a tiered opening could be challenging and not give as much time as we wish we could to kids. But I think that is one of the things we're still in discussion with our staff about, to see what's the best option. This is something I want to be clear about the conversations with staff. We all have concerns about coming back safely, the logistics, the details, and we all want it to happen. And so those kinds of questions are important for us to hear from you as we think about how we're going to be sure we structure this in the best way possible. We haven't talked about that as a likely option so far, but we'll add it to the list. Thank you.
I think there's still maybe some clarification that folks are looking for about how class time would be organized. Would the remote students be participating via Zoom along with the in-person students? Is all of this happening simultaneously? Maybe just some more clarification around that.
Yeah, before we answer that, can I say, we never have been able and don't want to dictate how each teacher teaches their class, because it is their personality and their style and their expertise and their incredible pedagogical skill that makes their class wonderful and often creates that dynamic engagement with students. Now, we logistically had to go almost all to Zoom with some asynchronous learning. And so we're going to emphasize as much of that as we can and know that there's going to be some variables that are very unique to the particular curriculum or class or teacher. So we'll talk in general terms, but this is not going to be an absolute dictate because of the kind of expertise and specialization our teachers have. Tom, do you want to add anything?
No, other than it might look different in different subject areas. It might be more easily done in, say, an English class to have simultaneous than maybe a PE or dramatic arts class. And as Polly said, our teachers will find a way to deliver thoughtful curriculum to our students, and it's going to be a little bit different. You will be hearing your teachers wear masks, but I think you can still hear me, and it'll look like this, but we will manage to do it.
I've seen some comments in the chat that folks are asking about the survey and if it was randomly selected participants. It was sent to every parent this morning at around 8 a.m. So please, those emails that you get from both the site and from the district, you should have received that. You can email me if you're having a problem with that though directly. So I just wanted to put that plug in. I think there's some questions about grading and if there might be any changes to our approach or grading policy as we make another transition.
We have not suggested that at this point, and I think grading is the purview of our staff, and we respect that, and it's also the legal responsibility of our staff and right for them to grade. But we have not talked about that. We have said that we want to help everybody know how difficult this time is. And so we want everyone to be a little mindful of the flexibility that's needed to make things work. And that's been true up till now. And it's going to be true again as we try to make another big transition.
If a student chooses remote learning, would they still be allowed to come in person for certain meetings with teachers or to see their guidance counselor?
Yeah. My quick answer to that is yes, and it's all about the number of students. So it may be that you'd have to sign up so that we're sure we don't have too many people in one place at any one time. But I think as much as we can be flexible, we want to be.
Similarly, could a student choose in-person learning for some classes where they feel that the face-to-face experience would be more beneficial and stay home for others?
Boy, I haven't thought of that one. I don't know, anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Oh, and just from a schedule standpoint, that could be tough in terms of getting back and forth from the class in person to getting online. So depending on where it falls in the day, it could be possible. But going from, as I look at the schedule, you wanted to be here for first, but not second, it'd be really hard to get home for most people in that 10 minutes and get all set up.
Assuming we return to something closer to a normal schedule or routine in the fall, would vaccinations be required for students 16 and older? And what about the younger students when those vaccines become available?
I don't know that, I think we're waiting for some legal guidelines around the requirements of vaccines. Obviously, there are required vaccines in many areas. We haven't heard about this one specifically. So I can't answer that question. I mean, my personal belief and my hope is that as many people get vaccinated as possible, because I believe it makes everyone safer. But I can't answer to the requirement or the legality. We would be guided by other legal requirements for that.
Can we speak to how many kids, an estimate, have not logged on to Zoom at all since we started this year? And are we seeing changes? I think they're referring to F or D grades in students.
I'm looking at my team here. I don't have the stats.
I would say that the number who have not logged in at all is pretty minimal, and that we are, when kids show up as absent, when they're not logging in, we actually have some of our classified folks who are calling the homes to say, hey, your kid's not here. Where are they? So the fact that they would be falling through the cracks like that is pretty rare. There are some kids who have had a difficult time and who have a hard time struggling. I just had a meeting with a kid today and got him involved in a pod that he hadn't been attending for a while. So I'm going to get him in and get him going. So, if your son or daughter's having some difficulties, we would definitely want to partner with you to try and help them get in. But if the question is about, are there lots and lots of kids out there? No, our attendance rates, when we're looking at them, are still pretty similar to what they were when we're in person. They're very, very low numbers. So it's not a huge number that's not checking in with us daily.
So low numbers of non-attendees.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg. What guidance are we giving to make sure that teaching is equitable for all students, those who choose to remain at home and those in person, who might have more attention from teachers?
I think that's going to be part of the conversation that our teachers have together in their collaborative groups. We're going to do nothing is going to be perfectly equitable. I don't want to pretend that that's true. I think but if I talk about the intent and the hard work and the commitment of our staff, they're going to do their best to make it equitable. But can I promise you that it's going to be minute for minute the same? No, I wouldn't do that to them or misrepresent what we think we can do. We are all human in this process, and I know that teachers are going to try to meet the needs of their kids, but the mere fact you're asking that question is an example of why we know this is going to be so challenging. And we all have to be thoughtful and supportive around that challenge.
Some questions about sports moving forward and why spectators are not allowed. Is this a county guidance or from the state?
Maybe I can talk. Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. Where as we go into season 2, actually, the spectators that will be allowed will be family members of the athletes participating. So there will be spectators once we kind of get into season 2. So we're almost there. There will be family passes that probably will be kind of assistant principals, athletic directors, coaches working to get those out to the families. I believe it's 4 family members per pass. And then you can imagine if we're talking about seating inside the stadium, we're talking about outside in the stadium, I should say, in groups of 4, those families, groups of 4 would also be separated physical distance of 6 feet or more. So, for example, at Monte Vista, we're kind of using some blue tape on the actual stadium bleachers to designate where families could sit together. So they'll show up together, they'll sit together, and then they'll leave together.
There's some more specific questions in the chat about different athletics, badminton, volleyball. When are things starting? Could we maybe just let parents know who to reach out to at the school site if they have those really specific athletics questions?
I would say by all sites, it's the athletic directors. So athletic directors' information is available online. They're the ones that are coordinating with our coaches and able to get that information probably most quickly of any of us.
Cami, did you have something to add?
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, so I think we're going to take one more question and then we're going to go to our survey. So please don't leave us because we do need your help with this next survey to make sure our local control plan is doing its due diligence to get input from you.
What if there are too many students that want to come back and you can't accommodate them all?
I think it's a matter of dividing them up into groups. I would say that would be something that would be very surprising because it's not happening in the other schools that have done these surveys. Our survey is looking very much like everybody else's. And what's interesting is, generally speaking, the first people that respond to this survey are the people that want to return. So we'll see as the time goes on if we see fewer. And honestly, I think these numbers are going to fluctuate. We do have that little leeway around 6 feet to 4 feet. So that'll help us as well. But we will find a way. Our goal is to find a way for kids to come back if they want to come back. And, we're going to try to do it within the framework that public health has required. And that's going to be our goal. So we're going to go to these surveys right now, and please stay with us. I hope I'm right, Rachel, we are. But I
Yes,
want
I'm going to let Graham know right now.
Okay, but I really am grateful for the time and the questions, and we'll try to take the questions from the chat and go a little deeper. And please know that you should hear from us again soon about the details of this. But I hope you heard today, there isn't a person on this call that you're hearing from on the panel that doesn't have a deep commitment to seeing students back. And I have heard from so many teachers who just have been dreaming about this for a long time and really can't wait for it to happen. And we all feel that way. We also know that there are kids who aren't ready and need to be home and to be safe, and that's fine too. And we want to support those students as well. So